Okay, let's dive in. We often think of human language as, well, just completely different, right?
Mhm.
So much more complex than anything else in the animal world.
Absolutely. We stack meanings, embed clauses.
Yeah.
It seems worlds apart from, say, a bark or a chirp.
Yeah, it's that layered structure, that ability to, build really intricate things by slotting ideas inside other ideas.
That's right. And that was always pointed to as sort of the hallmark, the thing that made human thought and language special.
And there's a specific term for that ability, isn't there? Recursion.
Exactly, recursion. The classic example is something like, this is the dog that chased the cat that killed the rat. You see how each bit modifies the one before.
Ah, okay. Or the research we're digging into today uses that analogy of Russian nesting dolls.
Perfect analogy. Little units inside bigger units inside even bigger ones. It lets us take a limited set of sounds or words and just generate endless, complex messages.
Right. Infinite possibilities from finite means, essentially.
Precisely. And the standard thinking for a very long time was that this kind of nested recursive structure, that was us. Only us.
It was sort of fundamental to how we saw ourselves, cognitively speaking, separated us from the rest of the animal kingdom.
But what if that whole picture wasn't quite right? What if recursion isn't just our thing?
Okay, now you've got my attention.
Well, that's what this deep dive is all about. There's some pretty remarkable new research that really throws a wrench into that old idea.
So we're looking at orangutans.
We are, specifically their communication. We're diving into findings about their vocal patterns that could, well, rewrite the story of how complex language structure even began.
So our mission here is to unpack this orangutan research and figure out what it really means for, well, everything, language, how animals think, maybe even our own evolution.
That's the plan. This work comes out of the University of Warwick, led by Dr. Chiara De Gregorio and her colleagues. It's published in the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences.
And they looked at what kind of sounds.
They focused on alarm calls, specifically from wild female Sumatran orangutans.
Alarm calls.
Yeah.
Like, hey, danger over here, kind of thing.
Exactly that. Warnings. But instead of just listening to what they said, they analyzed the rhythm and structure of these calls.
What did the rhythm tell them?
Something pretty unexpected. The structure wasn't just simple, like call, pause, call. It was self-embedded, nested.
Nested, how?
Across 3 distinct levels, it showed what they call third-order recursion. 3 layers of structure, one inside the other.
Whoa, hang on. 3 levels in an orangutan alarm call. That sounds complex. How does that even work? Can you break that down?
Yeah, let's try. So level 1, you have the basic individual sounds they make. Grunts, kiss squeaks, that kind of thing.
Okay, basic sounds.
But they don't just make random sounds. They combine these sounds into little sequences, little combinations. Think of these as the smallest nesting dolls, or maybe like short musical phrases.
Got it. Individual sounds get combined into small chunks.
Exactly. Then level 2, these small combinations get organized into bigger rhythmic units. The researchers called these bouts.
Bouts? Okay.
So the first level combinations are inside these bouts. That's your second layer of nesting, putting the small dolls inside a medium one.
Right, combinations inside bouts. And you said 3 levels. What's the third?
Yes. Then these bouts themselves are structured into even larger sequences. They call these series.
Series, okay.
And that's the third layer. The bouts are embedded within the series. So you've got sounds within combinations, combinations within bouts, and bouts within series.
Wow. Okay, that is like the Russian dolls. It's not just sound, sound, sound. It's structure within structure within structure. That's genuinely surprising to hear about in an ape call.
It really is. Finding that kind of multi-layered structure, that specific kind of recursion in a non-human primate, well, it flew in the face of what most people thought was possible.
So that's the big challenge to the idea that recursion is only human. But, okay, is it just complex noise? Or does this fancy structure actually do anything? Does it mean something?
Well, this is where it gets even more interesting. It's not just complexity for complexity's sake.
Right.
They found the orangutans actually changed the rhythm of these recursive calls depending on what kind of threat they were facing.
Wait, really? So the structure itself carries information about the danger?
Precisely. When the threat was, highly credible, think a tiger, something definitely dangerous, the rhythm of these calls got faster, more rapid fire.
Okay, fast rhythm for serious danger.
But when the threat was maybe something new, something ambiguous they weren't sure about, the study used like a pattern cloth to simulate this unfamiliarity. The calls were slower, more irregular.
That's incredible. So they're not just shouting danger, they're using the rhythm of this complex recursive structure to signal how much danger or maybe what kind of danger.
It seems so. It shows they can use this structured vocal recursion to convey meaningful information about what's happening around them.
Which really backs up the idea that language evolution wasn't just this sudden switch that flipped on in humans.
Exactly. It supports the view that these powerful recursive abilities might not have just appeared out of nowhere in Homo sapiens. They could have evolved step by step, incrementally, in much earlier ancestors.
Ancestors we share with orangutans.
Potentially, yes. It suggests the roots of this key feature of language could be much, much deeper in our evolutionary history than we assumed. Orangutans might be showing us a kind of living echo of how complex communication structures could have started.
So this really changes things, doesn't it? If recursion isn't solely human.
It forces a rethink on several fronts. First, animal cognition. What else are other species capable of that we've missed? Second, the definition of language itself. What are the truly essential bits?
And third, our own story, human evolution. It suggests maybe we weren't quite as exceptional, quite as much of a sudden leap as we thought. Maybe it was more gradual.
A more continuous path, perhaps.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. Key takeaways from this deep dive. First, we've seen wild orangutans use alarm calls that are way more complex and structured than expected.
Right. They show this multi-layered, three-level recursion, sounds inside combinations, combinations inside bouts, bouts inside series, third-order recursion.
And crucially, this structure isn't random. They vary the rhythm. Faster for big threats like tigers, slower for things they're unsure about.
Which proves the structure itself carries meaning. It's not just complex sound. It's structured vocal recursion, conveying real information about the world.
And the biggest implication. This shakes up that long-held belief that recursion is unique to humans.
It strongly suggests the origins of this cornerstone of language are deep in our shared evolutionary past, possibly evolving bit by bit in earlier ancestors. That's the core message from this University of Warwick research.
So thinking about why this matters to you listening, it really shifts our perspective, doesn't it? On animal minds, maybe making us realize they're more sophisticated communicators than we credited.
It pushes us to look again at what language even is, fundamentally. And it gives us this fascinating, maybe more humble view of human evolution. Less of a sudden jump, more of a gradual buildup of abilities with roots shared by other species.
It really does make you wonder if orangutans have this kind of hidden structure in their calls, these recursive patterns we thought were ours alone.
Yeah. What other kinds of complex structures, what other hidden layers of meaning might be sitting there in the communication of other animals just waiting for us to figure out how to listen?